Hello and welcome back to another episode of Power Rangers Lore. Today we will be discussing the what-if scenario of none other, Andros, if he was the Blue Ranger instead of the Red Ranger. Now this is a video that was requested by one of our subscribers here, and so I have been mulling this over in my head 5 times over, especially last night, going through all the different character scenarios. And the hardest one I've had was not what was happening to Andros, TJ, Ashley, or the Pink Ranger, but Carlos. What would Carlos do? And I found out a lot about that whole scenario. Now let's get down to it. What if Andros was actually the Blue Ranger? Now this is not a hard scenario to figure out immediately what would happen there. Now we know from the comic books that he did have a team that kind of raised him after the planet of KO-35 was attacked, and the like, and they were different aliens there, and they inspired him and Zane to continue fighting and work with them. And over time, the teammates died or passed away in battle, and until left was Andros and Zane. Now, it could have been, very simply, that Andros did take up the mantle of the Red Ranger at first, and then after he lost Zane, he realized as the last team member, he is not meant to be a leader. He just doesn't see it, he doesn't feel it, and he never really got the concept of it, at least in his head, because his entire team's dead except for him. So he puts down the thing, resets the morpher, and then grabs up the blue morpher, going, this is the next person who's inspired me. I can't really do anything else. And he just goes, he walks up to the comatose, in stasis corpse of Zane and goes, don't worry, I will never lead another team, and vows to do that. And that's where he takes the mantle of Blue Ranger. And he continues his crusade as the Blue Ranger there. Now, this stays that way for a while where he's alone until the entire events of the end of Turbo and him and the Turbo team going into space and landing aboard his ship. Now, what he was doing over Earth is not really speculated. Maybe he's just hiding there going, well, no one's going to look there, so should be safe. But he does have a ship there, they all land, and then eventually things change on the planet. He gives the morphers to the rest of the squad. Seeing that TJ had the same charismatic leadership as the rest of his former teammate and leader, he gives him the Red Ranger morpher, and kind of is for the better. It kind of like a sigh of relief that he has a team again. But this one, he doesn't have to protect. He doesn't have to fail them. But he promises he won't fail them even if he's not leader. He's going to continue fighting. But he still has his own agenda going on there. It's the same all Andros. So, he kind of recklessly runs into battle to take off all veteran. Like, basically, he goes into battle not to lead them or to protect other people per se, but he's here to protect his squad first and foremost. He's here to look after the squad, and he has a hard time connecting to them all because of all the past losses, all the PTSD he's suffered for all his teammates suffering in the past and their losses and all the issues. So he's have a hard time connecting to all of them. That is where we have the different story arcs start to developing. Now the main storyline doesn't change too much. Now, the side storyline changes a lot. Now, they have different arcs for this series. It's the first kind of major series that had all these different little mini arcs up until the end of the series. Now, we could add in additional mini arcs or kind of cut out some of the stuff that was in there and lead it more towards a better storyline telling for the rest of the characters in there. Because a lot of the characters in space just didn't get enough screen time. They got one episode's knockoffs to show off like their character development, but there wasn't really any character development besides that episode. It just kind of just went flatline after that. They're like, okay, Carlos has an episode, okay, dead until the rest of the end of the series. Ashley has an episode, okay, she's just a Mary Sue. Now, let's look at this differently from there on out. Now, how could we have built upon that? Well, since we know now at this time period, he could have found different things that showed that were possessions or were hollow messages from the former Rangers of the team. Like, TJ could have been dealing with a lot of self-doubt. And don't say he wasn't dealing with a lot of self-doubt because he just lost as the leader of Turbo. Now, mind you, he wasn't the leader of Turbo for very long before, like, they amped up on him, and he didn't have that true veteran skill. The veteran ranger of Turbo after Tommy and the squad left was Justin, and he was a kid, and he was only there just prior to that whole semester of school. So he's just that same, almost like the same amount. He's only just barely a little bit more of a veteran than TJ is, and that's not by much, and he's a kid. So these guys, this is their first real time they've dealt with a lot of loss, and TJ is probably the one who's suffering the most of it because his squad lost big time. Zordon got captured. All his mentors are gone. It's just him now leading this squad as the new Red Ranger of In Space. So he would have to do wake up sweat things going, no, my team's going to fail, die. He's going to have this whole types of self-doubt going on him. But he's going to push past it and hide it deep underneath this basically exterior he's built up. And he realizes if he hits it, like finds like a vid of the former Red Ranger and of In Space, and he gets to the ideas that go, okay, they also lost their team, and he learns more about Andros, and Andros kind of opens up to him and goes in the same scenario. They could have had an arc where these two are just talking and learning more things about each other and about what it means to be a leader and his past team and what happened there, and they could have expressed this whole issue, and it had been so much more like a dynamic interest. Like it could have been like a 1 to 2 episode storyline, a little mini arc going on there that would have developed TJ's character and Andrew's character subtly over time. Then intertwining the storylines of Andros and Ashley and their romantic relationship, her trying to open up to him, trying to find, she thinks he's cute, he's hot, that's what she's trying to focus on, and she's just trying to open a relationship between him, and it could have been more storyline telling rather her just being a Mary Sue and him just being a kind of basically just completely looking through all that and not realizing what a relationship is at all. But she could have also at the same time realized that things weren't all that it was all meant to be. Like, so she came from a cheerleader in Turbo, and she's very high fashion. She likes her things the way she likes them. Well, she could have had this little mini arc about her connection to Andros and his kid, basically her connection of like where her material desires don't mesh up with his. Like, yeah, she likes nice things, but he goes, what about the simplistic things? They could have a whole arc about that and had like a bonding experience there. She could have got over all these wants and desires where basically she sounds like a pompous, prissy little girl, brat girl. And that would have whole development. Like they could have went to like a planet looking for Zordon that had a royal line and high fashion and stuff like that. And she realized that these high fashion people were the evil people, and the poor people who are just wearing scrubs and are ugly were the kindest of souls. Like she could have had that whole little arc there going on, and Andros could have and her could have worked together. And that's where she realizes maybe she looks at high fashion and she goes, "This is just nasty." Like, do we really need these materials to live, or do we just need love? She could have had the whole little arc there going on. Now, for the Pink Ranger, things get a little more complicated. We know from Turbo that she's a singer, she's a songwriter, she is there for the rest of the group. However, she doesn't really have any real true standalone episodes that call out to her. She's always falling in love, but never with the right people. Now, a major mixed opportunity with this storyline could have been now that she types on this information in from the past teams and she learns about this stuff, and then she learns something more interesting there from this whole thing. That, well, instead, she learns about their former encounter with the Phantom Ranger. And that's where she piques her interest. And then she goes to Andros and she goes, what do you know about the Phantom Ranger? And he starts talking to her, and he opens up more to her about this past character, and they kind of start to bonding, which could have then led to Ashley kind of getting jealous there, like, oh, they're bonding over this person here, da-da-da-da-da, this mystery of the great Phantom Ranger, whatever. TJ's kind of forced his leader to kind of focus on this, like, hey, guys, we're looking for this, and he's like, but then she's going, no, well, if we find the Phantom Ranger, we can learn more, because he seems to know a lot about things. And TJ goes, well, that's kind of true. We could do that too. And Andros leads them on an expedition going on as he's going, well, the former Red Ranger did this, and this, but my real person would have, and he just goes silent for a bit. there goes on this little arc of like the search for the Phantom Ranger. It could have led to something, or it could have led to nothing. It didn't matter, but it was more about their connecting and character development and showing her character learning on and going there, and then her reconnecting later on with the Phantom Ranger at the end of the series. That could have been a whole thing. Now, Carlos, I have no idea what to do with him. I'm not gonna lie to you. I think Carlos is just there, and he kind of gets screwed because his character just doesn't do anything at all. They didn't know what to write. He went from an arrogant little jock soccer player to, yeah, he just a little guy, a guy who is just there, who's overwhelmed with his emotions of just complete and utter self-doubt about everything. Every time he had an issue, he's just filled with self-doubt and he didn't know what to do, or he was blackmailed by children. Like, yeah. So I don't know what to do. I would really love to go into an in-depth storyline with Carlos, but that would take literally 5 hours and a lot of like meticulous looking at things and going, yep, that's Carlos. So overall, what if Andros was the Blue Ranger would have changed the dynamic? And now why would it change all these characters' different storylines? Because the entire storyline is focused early on of all the early series around the Red Ranger. And it's, if you look back at it, it's kind of focused around Tommy as soon as he kind of shows up. Even though he's the Sixth Ranger, it's, yeah, Sixth Rangers and Red Rangers are usually the show stealers, and they're usually what the focus of the storyline is. Look at Zane's episodes when he kind of shows up in space. He has all these little arcs. You see his character develop. You see he has a love interest immediately with Astronema. He has all these different things. He goes off to save his people. And you understand Zane right then and there. You're like, okay, he's willing to sacrifice himself. He's a fun lover. He's like this. He plays all these different roles. He does what he has to do, unlike Andros. But he still is memorable because he's the Sixth Ranger and he has storyline. The rest of the squad is just kind of there to support Andros. And if you put Andros as not the main character, per se, he is still the main character, mind you, but he's the Blue Ranger, everyone focuses on the Red Ranger, and you can open up that storyline and open up and go, how does this Blue Ranger, the main storyline, like, you understand, like, nothing really changes in the overall arc of, like, the villainy. He's just the Blue Ranger. But it opens up to a lot of different things that could have happened because even though you're so focused on the Red Ranger, you have TJ now as this squad's Red Ranger, and he's there and he clashes with Andros early on because Andros is used to being alone on himself, doing his own thing, and TJ is going, okay, we can't lose again. This is what we're gonna do, and Andros does his own thing, and then eventually that heart to heart, like I said earlier, and they kind of respect each other, but the rest of the squad gets left out most of the time. So you have this, you can intercombine these different things to add up. It equals into Andros' storyline of opening up, rather than Andros realizing that there's criminals. Like, he would have known those people were bad people. Like, he's been on other planets. He knows good from bad. Like, that's not, I don't understand why he didn't know that those people were not, like, stealing cars. Like, I don't care how socially awkward you are or anything, or if you're suffering from whatever. It doesn't matter. If you've been fighting a Power Ranger and you know certain things and fighting bad people, you're like, this is my focus, is fighting bad people. How did I not identify these are bad people? Like, that's dumb. Like, if he came to the planet and he goes, I don't know what cheesecake is, and he just thought cheese and cake, where's that? That's completely different. But, like, I would understand that. But, like, what? I don't. Yeah, no, it didn't make any sense. Like, there's certain episodes they could have taken out. I understand why they put him in there. It was basically for kids to realize, like, hey, these guys are bad. Humans can be bad too. Blah 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 blah. But don't be bad. Be a good kid. But we could have had a much better story arc going on there rather than just have that public awareness thing. And it would have added on to an overall development of character development for everyone there rather than just Andros running off and not really being a leader in the original series because he was always running off and leaving his team behind. So if he was Blue Ranger, that's fine. That's completely fine. I could allow that. But that is the what if scenario of Andros. Now, the only little things I would add on there at the very end, as I said before, the main storyline would not change. They have the same things going on. The Astronema arc would happen. This reveals. Now, the only other thing would be the ending. At the end, they could have had this two ways. Andros and TJ have a heart-to-heart, and they go to the final battle, and TJ hands Andros the red morpher and goes, "It's your time to lead. This is your time invasion. We're going to do this for you, and you're going to do this for me." And they have this little dispute, but eventually either two things can happen. Andros becomes the Red Ranger and leads the charge against his sister and the last remnants of Dark Spectre. And would have had the same final ending there, and that's how it would have been. Or we would have had TJ, still the leader, runs up with Andros. They do that fight, and TJ orders the squad to keep fighting. Maybe even Justin shows up to fight with the Humvee. That'd have been cool. They've done it before. They can bring it in there for the final battle if they are on Earth. And TJ and Andros go and fight off Ecliptor and Astronema at the very end. They do this great fight there. Andros is fighting Astronema. TJ's fighting Ecliptor. Zordon looks at TJ and goes, "I need you to strike me down. It's the only way." And TJ's going, "No, I'm here to save you. I failed you last time. Da 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 da." And Zordon goes, "No, you didn't fail me. You've never failed me. You just need the only person you think you failed is yourself, and you didn't fail yourself. You kept the squad together. You kept this whole thing." Gives him a whole mentor advice thing and goes, "Strike me down, and I will end this battle once and for all." And he does it. He strikes him down, but he's like imagine his visor's cracked in the battle with Ecliptor, and you just see a tear drop down as he does it, and it just wipes out all the evil, and he falls down. And he goes, "Zordon, I'm sorry." And then you hear the last remnants of the wave goes over, and he goes "I forgive you, but you've never needed my forgiveness." And that had been a beautiful storyline there for TJ and Andros, because they both get what they want, the redemption that he needs, even though he now has to deal with the suffering of killing Zordon. But Zordon basically goes "I was dying. Either way, you need to do this the correct way to save myself from being fully corrupted by the evil." And then Andros gets his sister back, and they have that whole beautiful arc, and it would have been fantastic, and I see it already in my head. But that is the what-if scenario of Power Rangers in Space if Andros was the Blue Ranger. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Do you think there's any changes? Do you think there's anything I could have wrote for Carlos? I don't know, because it could have been such a crazy thing if Carlos had anything going for him. But he didn't. He gets turned into more monsters than anybody else. So, have a good one, guys. Be safe, and may the power protect you. Let me know in the comments down below. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. It helps me out, and I'll be doing these videos more consistently here in the future. Bye.